Okay. Hey, everybody. I'm Tiana, a local realtor and investor here in this DC, Maryland area. And today I just want to talk a little bit about building wealth through real estate. Since it's the beginning of the year, I want to make this a goal setting workshop so that everyone can make sure that they have their plan for how they're going to prepare for this upcoming year. So we're going to first take a look at some different strategies for how you would invest in real estate. And then from there, just go from what are these strategies? What are the risks of these strategies? And then also, what are you going to do? What's your risk tolerance and what do you want to do? So I have a group of workshops called Legacy Queen Workshops, and it's here on my website. I have tons of pre-recorded content on how do you build a legacy through financial planning, real estate, and investing. And throughout the year, I do monthly workshops. So our monthly workshops talk about a lot of different things. So this one is more about goal setting. We've also had workshops on how to find, analyze, and close on real estate deals. We've talked about common real estate investing strategies, making money with rooming houses, and even writing competitive offers. So we really go through everything, talking about both multifamily rentals and then also room rentals, single family home rentals, and really the ins and outs of being a landlord. So my specialty is providing education to people who are interested in real estate. I've been investing in real estate for 10 years now, since 2015. So I've been investing in real estate for a long time. And I really just wanted to start out and get my first property because I wanted some additional income. And it kind of grew from there where I was buying a property or two every year or every 2 years. And I was able to continue to grow. And now I have like a little portfolio that will allow me to be able to retire one day, hopefully sooner than others, with my real estate portfolio. So once I realized how important it was to use real estate to build wealth, what I did was I just created workshops for other people. And then I work with different groups such as the multifamily movement in order to help people understand how do I get into real estate investing? How do I get into purchasing a house? And most importantly, how do I make money off of my home? So let's go ahead and get into this goal setting workshop. So today we'll talk a little bit about the real estate pathways, what goal setting will look like, understanding your why, motivation, timeline, what is the reward for investing, and then some of the obstacles that you may have to overcome. And then at the very end, I'll also provide you all with some resources for what you need in order to get started. So once again, I've already introduced myself a little bit, but I'm a realtor, Tiana Otley, a realtor with South State Dominion Realty. My broker actually has over 38 years of real estate experience, so I've been able to learn a lot. But I'm also really into learning on my own through reading books, podcasts, taking classes. Like I can go in a deep dive and like really become a nerd about real estate investing. I can spend hours and hours going on a deep dive, learning about different investment strategies and just understanding the real estate market. So since 2015, I've done a number of rental properties. I've done short-term rentals, midterm rentals, which is mainly to travel nurses. I've of course done long-term rentals, which is really my bread and butter. I like Section 8 rentals because I like receiving money from the government so that even if my tenant doesn't pay their portion or their full portion of the rent, I still get something coming in. I've also extensively used the BRRRR strategy, which is when you buy a property, you rehab that property so that it'll be worth more. That way, when you go to refinance the property, you can pull that money back out and then rent the property out and you keep doing it again. In the past couple of years, I've done a major rehab and that property is actually set to sell at the end of this month. But I've talked extensively about my ups and downs through this entire rehab process, and the headache it's been, and also a lot of the things I've learned. And then because when I started investing in real estate, I was actually in grad school. I started off doing student rentals and room rentals in my home. So I would rent to college students and grad students in my home in order to make money in real estate. So my criteria for purchasing my first home was it has to be near public transportation, and I had to have enough rooms for me to be able to rent out the rooms and still make additional money on the side. So there's a lot of reasons why other people get into real estate, right? So if I go through, I actually teach a class at a high school about real estate, and I'll ask them, like, why do you want to get into real estate? And people will say, like, oh, I just want to make my own money. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want just the extra cash. Some people, they don't want a boss. They want to be able to earn as much money as they possibly can. Wealth building is really important, but people don't understand how they build wealth. Some people just want to work from home. And then some people really, they're just interested in meeting new people. So they just enjoy meeting new people and they feel like real estate would be a way to do it, which it actually is because there's tons of things to do in real estate. But the top reasons that you kind of see across the country is for financial freedom. So that's replacing your 9 to 5 income, and then entrepreneurship. And then also people want to supplement their income with cash flow. That's actually how I got started. At the time, I didn't really love my job. So I was like, okay, well, how can I make additional money on the side while I'm still working my job, so that just in case I have to just quit this job and leave it, I can still have enough money coming in order to be able to sustain myself. And then as after I bought my first property, that's when I learned a lot about how millionaires use real estate to build wealth. And then real estate is just a really key component of of wealth building in the United States. Most millionaires own real estate. Most people who become millionaires do so through real estate. And just think about all the baby boomers now who have all this equity in their home. A lot of the ways that people make money in this world or make wealth in America is through real estate. I like this asset class because most of Congress owns real estate and or rental property. And so therefore, they're more likely to pass legislation that'll kind of protect this real estate industry. Um, there's so many different jobs you can get. I think today we're going to focus more on the real estate investing side. But this just throw this up there. You can be anywhere from an agent to an appraiser, a contractor, a lender, a flipper. Like there's so many different jobs you can do. And a lot of these jobs you can do them concurrently. Like I could be a real estate agent and also I could have a lending company as well. I can be and then at the same time I can flip properties and also be a landlord, and I can also be a property manager. Like I can do all those things at the same time, and I can be a licensed plumber on the side if I wanted to. So there's so many ways to make money, and a lot of these career fields allow you to do multiple pathways. So it's really about you choosing the one that works. So because I'm mainly interested in wealth building, that's my bread and butter for real estate. It's like retirement and wealth, but I want to make money. I'm in real estate for money. So because I'm mainly interested in wealth building, I like the idea of being a real estate investor, because even though you can get cash flow from your properties, and yeah, that's good, even though you can get residual income from your properties, my main thing is I want my properties to appreciate over time. And then as they appreciate over time, they'll become worth more. And then that means I become worth more because I own these properties. So I really love the idea of building wealth through real estate and finding ways for my real estate property to become even more valuable. So if I say I don't buy in the right area, maybe I can renovate the property. And then I like to use some of that money in order to acquire new property. So say I buy a property for $300,000, but in a couple of years now it's worth $320,000. I prefer to cash out that equity so I can use that additional $20,000 in order to buy as a down payment for new property. So, and that's a lot of the ways of how people actually grow. Like you can save up money or you can just use the equity you have in a property in order to purchase more properties. And then tax deductions for people who have a lot of income, they can actually buy real estate mainly for tax deductions. Now, it works for everyone, but it works more so if you have a lot of income that you want to write off, because basically you could take the value of the property divided by, I think it's 27 and a half, or is it 21 and a half, and essentially depreciate that amount every single year, which means that you pay less taxes on the regular money you own. And this is just because you own real estate. So that's a little bit harder for a lot of people to understand. So I would say definitely talk to a tax professional about this, but that's something that I 100% take advantage of. And that's something that a lot of politicians and wealthy people take advantage of as well. So I talked a little bit about my pathway from buying my first house to using equity in that house to buy my next properties and the next one and the next one, Burring and then Airbnb. And then I did a full gut rehab and became a realtor. And now I work with other people to help them buy properties. But let's talk about the power of one. So if the goal is to increase your assets, you can actually just do that by buying one rental property. With one rental property, and like most rental properties, you put down a 30-year mortgage. You put on a 30-year mortgage. If you don't have cash, like $300,000 cash saved up, you can basically borrow that money from a mortgage company, and they give you about 30 years to repay it. Now, there are some loans that give you 15 years to repay it. So I would actually say, look at when you plan to retire and figure out if you want to retire in 15 years or 30 years or somewhere near it, and actually put a property under a mortgage for that length of time. At the very end of that 15 or 30-year period, you will own that property outright for that amount. Now, typically, the property value will increase, right? Over time, over 30 years, property values are going to most likely increase. But even if the property value goes down, you're still going to own something. So this I say, like, even one property, if you look at it 15 years later or 30 years later, once that mortgage is paid off, that gives you equity right there. So just doing a little bit of math, right? If you purchase one property and, oh, sorry, if you take your one property instead, do 5 rental properties, each of them were $300,000. So say every 2 years for 10 years, I bought one rental property. That's $300,000 for one rental property. Just whether or not my property makes money as a rental property or not, just after paying that mortgage for that 30-year time span or that 15-year time span with 5 properties each that you bought for $300,000, you're going to have a $1.5 million net worth, right? Because all those properties are going to be paid off. So that means when you go to retire in that either 15-year or 30-year time frame, you'll be worth $1.5 million and you'll have access to that money. You can use that money to either supplement your other income because maybe you paid into a 401k or a 403b, or you can use that money to completely live off of, or you can sell some of the properties and live in one of the properties and just take a modest amount. There's so many things you can do with that money at that time frame. So that's a really good retirement plan, is literally just getting one and then deciding if you want to get another one or another one or another one. Just as a point of reference, if I wanted to have like just a $300,000 like net worth as a real estate agent, I would have to sell $10 million worth of properties just to be able to make $300,000 as a real estate agent. So that's a lot of work, right? When you can do this in a more passive way. All right. So you have the option to figure out what you want to do. And these properties are basically the tool that you're using in order to get to this wealth. So let's look at it another way. So that's just the power of one is just the property itself, right? You bought it for $300,000. It didn't appreciate or anything. It just is still worth the same $300,000. After 30 years, you pay off that mortgage, or if you get a 15-year mortgage, after 15 years, you pay off that mortgage. You now have this asset that's worth $300,000. Actually, that's kind of more like a savings plan, right? You're paying into a 401k, you're paying into this property. It's really more so a savings plan. But if we actually look at properties in the US, on average, properties appreciate 3 to 5% a year. Now, in certain markets, they appreciate even more than that. But I'm just saying on average, right? Like, because DC properties can appreciate 7% in 1 year or even more than that, depending on what's going on. But say you have a property that was worth $250,000 and it appreciated 4%. That means that next year that property is worth $260,000 because 4% of $250,000 is 10,000, right? For that one property, you have $10,000 worth of wealth now in 1 year. simply because you bought it and then natural appreciation happened, right? The cost of living naturally increased, the cost of milk, the cost of a carton of eggs, everything got expensive, and so did the housing market, right? Say you have 10 properties, just in that 1 year, with that 10% increase, with that 4% increase per property, a $10,000 increase per property, you'll have $100,000 of appreciation. So that means your net worth would improve by $100,000 that year, just because you own 10 properties and they're naturally appreciating. So in 10 years, say, even if, and this is not even perfect math, in 10 years, if you own 10 properties and the properties are appreciating on average 4% every year, and if you own 10, you'll be a millionaire in 10 years just by owning these 10 properties, right? So in 30 years, it'll increase them more. In 40 years, it'll increase them more. In 15 years, it'll increase them more. So just keep that in mind, is that that's simply off of appreciation. Properties grow in value because the economy grows in value. And the one thing you got to remember is that the US is always going to bet on itself. So if you think like the entire housing market is going to crash and there's going to be no more properties, that all the properties are going to be worth zero, think about it. Why would any policymaker who owns property, any congressman, anybody, any president, all these people own rental property, own real estate, why would they ever allow the entire economy to crash to such a level? I have not seen it happen, and really, like, since the Great Depression hasn't been that bad. So keep that in mind. Okay, and then we also have to talk about cash flow. So cash flow is basically when you're making money on a property, right? The way that you're making money on the property is by renting that property out for more than the expenses on that property. So this is where people get it wrong. They say, oh, I bought this property. On a monthly basis, I have to pay about $1,200 a month. So I'm going to rent it out for $1,200 a month. Perfect. Okay, I'll break even. No, you won't even break even, because just that $1,200 a month could just be your mortgage, taxes, insurance. You still have your operating expenses. So operating expenses is basically maintenance on the property. So that can be the toilet. Oh, I can give you guys my examples from this past month. The toilet stopped working, so you need a new toilet. The dryer is not drying correctly, so you need to get someone out there and check on that. The water heater, the pilot light went out, so you need to get someone to check on that. These are just the ones that I had this past month. So imagine that happening at properties. These are normal wear and tear things that are going to happen. You also have to consider capital expenditures, right? If you own a property over 30 years, major repairs are going to happen. So you should be saving for those major repairs, and that's what we call capital expenditures. So you should be putting aside a certain amount. Typically, we say 10% of the rents, but it can be more than that, depending on like your personal financial situation. But typically, you're putting away a portion of the rents in order to pay for these capital expenditures. So that includes you're going to need a new roof. What's the lifespan of your roof? Is it 10 years? Is it 30 years? Is it 7 years? You're going to need a new roof every 10 years or every 15 years. You're going to need a new water heater every 10 to 15 years. You're going to need a new dishwasher, a new, like, there's going to be things that happen, and you want to make sure you set aside money to be able to cover those things. That way, if you're keeping up with the wear and tear on the house, you're keeping up with the maintenance, then at the end of the 30 years, you don't have a property that has 30 years of deferred maintenance. You have a property that actually is still in pretty good condition because you've been keeping up with it over time. So when we look at cash flow, basically we're saying our rents minus all of our expenses need to equal some additional money. That additional money is our monthly cash flow. That's the true definition of cash flow, is that you need additional money above that. There has to be some sort of spread. So depending on how many units you have, some people do it by the percentage of your return on your investment, right? Basically saying like, hey, if actually I'm going to the next spreadsheet. Hey, if this property, if I put down this amount of property, then I want the property to return at least 12% return on my investment. Other people do it based upon a number. Like for each property, I want to make at least $300 in addition for each property. All right. So if I own 10 properties, that's $3,000 a month. Okay, perfect. That takes care of childcare. That takes care of vacation. That takes care of I can put that towards my retirement fund. So people have different goals. I've heard some people, some larger investors who have like 100-unit properties or more say like, we just need $100 a month per unit of pure cash flow, and this deal works for us. But it's going to vary with each person. Typically, we want to make sure that whatever your cash on cash return is, like whatever your return on your investment is, it's going to be more than what you would make in other markets, in other asset classes, right? Making money in real estate makes sense if you're making more money than you would say in the stock market or buying gold or in crypto, right? That's what makes this a good investment. Unless you're going to live in the property or work in the property, this makes this a good investment. Now, there are other things that make this a good investment, like depreciation, but when we're looking strictly at the return on your investment, meaning how much money you're making in comparison to how much money you spent on this investment, the return on investment should be more than what the average return on investment is for other asset classes. So I do invest in some stock, but I mainly invest in real estate because the return on investment in real estate, for me, is much larger than the stock market ever is. Okay. Nobody has money for real estate, right? If you got that much money, congratulations. But for the regular person, we don't have money. So we use someone else's money, right? And by using someone else's money, we're able to buy more properties. So say I had $100,000, right? I'm blessed, I'm balling, I got $100,000. Do I use that $100,000 to buy one property, and buy property in this area, that's going to be like a condo in PG County and like District Heights? I looked it up. Or that could be an actual house in Baltimore, like a 2-bedroom. So do I use that $100,000 to buy one property and that property is fully paid off, right? And that's a great option. Or do I separate that $100,000 and instead put $20,000 down on 5 properties, right? The con is that now I own 5 properties. That means I have 5 roofs, 5 water heaters, 5 HVAC systems, 5 times as much to deal with in terms of maintenance and repairs. The pro is that now I have 5 properties. That means I have 5 properties that are appreciating assets. So if each of those 5 properties are appreciating $10,000 every single year, then that means I'm making $100,000 back in no time. All right. So those are the pros and cons. You can buy that one property with cash. It does feel like a weight lifted because you don't owe the bank anything, but you're not going to be able to grow as fast because now you need to save a whole nother $100,000 to get another property. But by the time you do that, properties are now selling for 120 or 150 and they get more expensive. So we actually use leverage in real estate, which is basically talking to a lender, a mortgage lender, and they're representing the bank. The bank helps you buy the house. So you put down your down payment and the bank pays the rest. And you rent out the property. That tenant pays off the loan. Ideally, you can let a property manager handle everything so you don't have to deal with it. Realistically, property managers sometimes create more stress than the actual tenant. It just depends on what situation you're in. And then you collect the cash every month. You allow inflation to do what it does, which is make your property appreciate, and then you just continue to increase your wealth. That's the power of leverage in real estate. You use someone else's money in order to make you more money. Because if you didn't use their money at all and you didn't have the full $100,000, you would not even be able to benefit from cash flow or appreciation at all. Okay. So really simple. Number one rule in real estate, whether you're buying, selling, renovating, flipping, or investing or whatever, number one rule, location, location, location. So if you want to be successful in real estate, my suggestion is to buy a modest house in the best area. There's always this back and forth. Do you buy the best house in the worst neighborhood, like the mansion, gorgeous, but you're not in that great of a neighborhood? Or do you buy something that's like more modest, but in a really, really great location? And the answer is location, location, location. You want to buy the property that's in the best area because location determines the value of your property and is going to determine the future value of your property as well. So if you don't have any money right now, you should at least be identifying what your target areas are. Where do you want to invest? Where are you seeing some strong economic indicators? Where are you seeing a lots of construction happening? If you're seeing lots of construction happening, then that means that other people are putting millions of dollars into that area and they're doing that for a reason. So it's a pretty safe bet that you kind of follow trend. If you see them, here you go. If you see them put a Starbucks somewhere, you already know that Starbucks, this global company, has done their research to determine that that's a property, that that's a good area for them to have their business. And as a result, that may be an area that you want as well. All right. So do your research. That's the main thing you guys should be doing is doing your research. You should be driving areas. I always tell my clients this. When you're actually going to see properties, you should know the area almost better than your realtor. Like you should have driven that property during the day, during the night. You should know the areas that you want to invest in. Because yeah, we can go ahead and try to say like, oh yeah, this is a pretty good area, but that could be good for us. Like my definition of good may be different from what you're looking for. I don't know your family dynamics. You may want an area that has a really good school district, and I don't know if all the schools are great. I don't have kids yet. So you would know that more than us, and you can do a lot of that research either just by researching a lot online, right? There's online companies where you can, online websites where you can research the area of the property and kind of determine their breakdown. For instance, Niche will give you school ratings, crime ratings, safety ratings, everything. You can actually do the crime map. And then also you're driving the areas to see how you feel. Because if you choose to manage that property, whether you're managing a property for a renovation or managing the rental property, you're going to have to feel comfortable driving to the area. And then most importantly, which is what most of my clients do, is live in the property. You're going to have to feel comfortable living in that property. All right, so let's go into the different types of investment properties because there are so many different types. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go about investing. So you can do short-term rentals, right? Short-term rental is when you're renting the property for less than 30 days. That's typically the definition in this area is less than 30 days. Mid-term rental, I normally say it's 3 to 6 months, but if your area determines that a short-term rental is less than 30 days and you have to get a special license, that means that everything above that 30 days is a regular rental license. Because I haven't seen midterm rental license, but that can be a long-term rental as well. I look at long-term rentals as more 6 to 12 month rentals. These are the traditional rentals that we see. Most of the time, people who are renting, they have a lease for at least 1 year. That's pretty traditional. You can choose that. Oh, we're going to talk about that. Well, you can choose furnished rentals or unfurnished. So my next property is going to be a furnished rental. Why? Because I want people to be able to come without bringing their own furniture because I want them to leave shortly after, right? I want to rent it out for the weekend. You come, sleep here, pay money and leave, or rent it out for the day. You come, use the space for whatever whatever event you want within reason, and then you leave. Or unfurnished rental, which is popular. You buy a house, it's empty, you rent it out to someone, they bring all their own furniture, their own bed, and they live in there. You can do room rental. So in DC specifically, a lot of the properties don't make sense in terms of a whole unit rental. You can buy a 3-bedroom property in DC for $500,000, but you cannot rent that property out for $5,000. But for that 3-bedroom property, you may be able to get maybe $2,500, $2,800 a month, $3,000 a month in rent, possibly. But if you turn it into room rentals, maybe you can get $1,200 per room or $800 per room. It depends on really what market you're in. Like if you're near U Street area, you can easily get $1,500 per room. If you're east of the river, then the market's probably going to be closer to 800 to 1,000 per room. And that depends on if your room has an attached bathroom, what's the closet space, what neighborhood is it in, are you renting additional things like a garage space, parking pad? So there's so many determining factors. And then other types of investment properties. Do you want to do rehabs or do you want to buy turnkey? Rehab means that you're doing a renovation of property. You're putting money into making that property look better. Turnkey means the property is ready to go. Like you bought it, you put your key in the door, you turn it, you're ready to rent it out, you're ready to move in. It's turnkey. All right. Rehabs, theoretically, you can make a lot of money in rehabs because you can sell it for what it's now worth. So you buy it for what it's worth before the renovation and you sell it for what it's now worth. The issue is that some people are selling properties that need renovation for the price of a turnkey. And you can't make any money if you do the renovation. So a lot of properties are not making good sense as rehab properties. In-state versus out-of-state. Oh my gosh, I love this DC area because literally, no, I don't know everywhere else. I've only been here. But in DC, you can spend $600,000 on a house, drive 15 minutes, and now you can spend $300,000 on a house, like PG County, drive another maybe 40 minutes, get to Baltimore, or spend $60,000 on a house. I'll never forget that. I bought one house for $500,000. I think a year later, I bought another house for $60,000 or $70,000 in Baltimore. So within 1 hour, you can do so many things. And that's how it is in other areas of the country as well. There's some markets that are super cheap and other markets that are more expensive, and there's benefits to both markets. Do you want to do rentals, which means you're dealing with renters, or do you want to do flips, which means you're dealing with contractors? Each one of them has their own set of benefits and their own set of headaches. And then do you want to do arbitrage? Arbitrage is instead of you buying a property for yourself, you're reaching out to a landlord who's renting the property out to see if you can rent that property out from them, and also if you can sublease that property to someone else. So I would say, hey, Tiana, do you have a property that's like 4 bedrooms that I can rent out? Okay, yeah. So you're charging $3,000. This is DC. I'm thinking of. Let me think of Maryland. You're charging $2,500 for that property. Okay, great. I want to rent out to you because I know I can make $1,000 per room, right? Because it's 4 bedrooms, so I can make $1,000 per room, and that way I'll make $1,000 a month because I'll keep this property rented out. You get your 3,000 that you wanted. I collect the difference. Or I'm going to rent it out and I'm going to turn it into an Airbnb, and you're going to still get your regular rent and I'm going to get anything above that because I'm renting it out for now $200, $300 a night, whereas you were only going to get X amount a night because you were going to rent it long term. So that's arbitrage. You don't own the property, but you basically are getting permission to use the property for rental purposes. Wholesaling assignment is super regulated now, but basically you're finding a property. It's really good marketing. That's what wholesale assignment is. You're finding a property under market value. So finding someone who has not sold their property yet, you're convincing them to sell it, or maybe they want to sell their property, but you're convincing them to sell it for less than what the property's worth. And then you're going on the other side and finding a buyer who's willing to pay more than what you got it under contract for. So this is nice home. I know Auntie Ann she's getting old. She's about to go to retirement home. Or I don't want to be predatory against older people, but she's done with this house. She's tired of it. She's moving somewhere else. She just wants to get rid of it. She's going to sell it to me for $250 because she got it for $100,000 way back in the day. So $250 is great for her. She doesn't want to do any work to it whatsoever. I know that this house is actually worth $315, right? But people are going to have to put some work into it. So even though she's selling to me for $250, I can easily sell it to another investor for maybe $280,000, and they're going to do the renovation of the property to get it to be worth $315. I'm the wholesaler, I'm the signer, I'm the person that's in the middle. So I'll make my 30 grand by buying it by getting it under contract for lower than it's worth, and by selling that contract to someone who's willing to pay more. That's how I make my money, not by actually selling the property to an actual person. I'm making my money by selling the contract. And then the last one is syndication. So syndication is essentially when you are you're investing into another investor's project, kind of, right? So nationwide, there are these large investors who raise money in order to buy huge properties. So these are the 100 unit properties or commercial properties or even portfolios of like 300 units. And instead of, like I said, we always use other people's money. So instead of those people just using their own money to do that, they raise money from other people. So these are people like me, like I'm a limited investor. I'm investing to the syndication. Maybe they need $3 million to make it work. But they projected being worth $5 million in 7, 8 years, in 10 years, right? So they want me to give them $100,000. They're going to invest it, and then they're going to pay me out slowly. And then maybe after that 10-year time span, I'll get a big chunk of what they sold it for. Or I'll just get paid out slowly through the rents that it's receiving. That's a syndication. So that's super complex. Not everyone, like we can form a syndication ourselves, like as family and friends. But when it comes to some of those big companies, a lot of times you guys don't hear about it because you have to be an accredited investor in order to do it. And there's really strict regulations on who an accredited investor is. You basically have to prove that you're able to lose a lot of money without it really impacting you. So you have to be a millionaire, basically. So yeah, so these are different types of investment properties. I see someone say I like arbitrage. Yeah, it's low risk. um, the greatest strategy, and I'm not biased at all. I am. The greatest strategy is house hacking. House hacking is when you live in one part of the property and you rent out the other part of the property. The reason why this is such a great entry level way to get into real estate investing is because you have to live somewhere anyway. So you would already be paying rent or rent. You already be paying rent. So now at least you're paying a mortgage. And theoretically, when you're paying the mortgage, you can actually get someone else to pay you money back, right? So say you house hack for 2 years and you're able to cover your whole rent, your whole mortgage, then you get that money back, right? Is your landlord going to say like, oh, you rented for 2 years, but let you moving out, go ahead and get your money back? No, they're never going to give you your money back. So this allows you to be able to get your money back by renting out other rooms or even other units. So I house hacked by doing room rentals. And or basement rentals. Like I wanted a house specifically that had a walkout basement because I wanted to renovate the basement in order to turn that into a separate rental so that someone can have their own entrance. That's actually how I bought my first house. That's the main thing I was looking for, is it having a basement and being near public transportation. But you could also do a property that's actually legally zoned or not even legally zoned as a multi-unit, like a duplex, which is 2 units, a triplex, 3 units, or a quadruplex, which is 4 units. If it's not legally zoned, then you can't rent that out as a unit, but you can rent it out as a room, right? So if you have a basement, you can rent out rooms in your house. So if the basement is the room, as long as it has legal egress, and it's still safe, then you can still rent it out. So that's why it's such a great level way of getting into real estate investing. And I say that whenever people buy properties, whether you plan to rent that property out or not, you should always buy a property with the idea that you can house hack in the future, right? Because you never know what's going to happen with the economy. If the economy goes down and you need to rent out rooms in order to make ends meet, say you lose your job, you want to have that option available to you. And then also it's really easy to buy a single family home in a house hack. It's harder to find the multi-units, much harder and a little bit more expensive, but you can easily house hack a single family home. So let's talk about some of the ways to house hack. So we've actually heard about Airbnb, right? I just took a screenshot today of these are some of the nightly rates in Airbnb. If I went to go rent out a room, a place tonight in DC, I think I put for 4 or 5 people. This is the nightly rate. So this is what we see. This actually looks good, right? So say, I think they say that the occupancy rate is about a little over than half the month. It might be more than that, but let's just go with half the month to be conservative. $132 times 15 days in a month, that's $1,980, right? So I would ask myself, what does this property rent for when it's not on Airbnb? What's the long-term rental, right? So 274 times 15, that's 4,110, right? So this must be a house. So what could I normally get? So anything above 50% occupancy, so 15 days out of the month, I'm making even more money. So this is a great way because people basically go, they spend the night at the property, and they pay by night. So they may actually stay 3 nights or longer. Sometimes they stay a month. You can also use other spaces where you rent out your property by the hour. And this is actually what I'm leaning towards, because for these same rates, you guys are looking at these rates. Now, granted, these houses are nice, but for these same rates, 185, 150, 160, $400 per hour, you're getting that money because people want to do a photo shoot, because people want to do a baby shower. So for about the same amount as you would pay per night, you can actually rent out your space by the hour, right? So that changes the game. It changes the game for people who say like, oh, I don't really want to live with anybody else, you know? So now, okay, you don't have to live with anyone else, but can you have an event at your space on the weekends? What else are you doing? You want to make an extra $275 this weekend? So it just changes the game in terms of what you're able to do. And this is the new model. I've heard about it maybe for a couple of years now, but this is a great way to just earn additional income in real estate. So someone asked if we're even allowed to do short-term rentals. And yes, we are. However, they have cracked down in this DC, Maryland area on who can do it. And the number one rule in this area is that the property has to be owner occupied. Sorry, I lied. The property has to be host occupied, not owner occupied. It has to be the place where you live. So if you live in a rental property and your landlord is okay, that's your primary residence, and your landlord is okay with you renting the property out, then you should be able to rent the property out as long as your landlord is okay, because that's your primary residence. So I've been saying owner occupied, but you just have to be, as a host, that has to be your primary residence. So you have to prove that this is my primary residence. Now, DC has two policies. One is short-term rental. That means that you're actually in the property at the time that the guests are in the property. So this is like, hey, I have an extra basement, or I actually have an extra bedroom. I'm going to rent this bedroom out. But instead of renting out for the entire month or entire summer or an entire year, I'm only going to rent it out on a nightly basis or weekend basis while I'm staying in the house. In order to do that, that guest can only stay a max of 30 nights before they have to leave, and then they can rebook the place if they want to. But the max is 30 nights. Typically, people are doing like 3 or 4 nights. They're doing a weekend, or they're doing a week, but they can't stay like, oh, I'm going to stay for an entire 3 months. No, because then as it's being defined by DC law, now you're into long-term rental licensing. So anything above 30 nights, you are into long-term rental licensing. But because you're staying in the property as a host, you can have an unlimited number of guests stay. So there's 365 days in a year. If you want to rent out your property for one night every single day of the year, you can totally do that in limited amount because you live in the property. Now, how DC defines a vacation rental is that when the host is not present. So this is your primary residence. If you are not in that property, then you can rent out that property for 90 days for the year. So let me explain that better. If you want to rent out the entire property and you not be there while the rental is taking place, because this is still your primary residence, you not be there while the rental is taking place, then you can rent it out for 90 days total per year. So the way they came about this is that some people, maybe they travel during the summertime. Hey, I'm not going to be here during the summertime anyway, so why do I have to have my property just sitting vacant? I would rather rent it out on Airbnb. Okay, that's totally fine. You're not going to be here. You can rent your entire house out. You're entire unit out. That's totally fine. But you can do it no more than 90 days out of the year. Same rules is that you can't rent out more than 30 nights per guest. So for the guests that's staying, they can't stay 31 nights, right? They need to stay 30 nights or fewer. Other than that, it becomes a long-term rental. All right. So you can still do it, but you need to get your long-term rental license. All right. So you can still rent over 30 nights. However, you need to get your long-term rental license to do that. All right. And then some other things is DC wants proof of liability insurance. So your regular homeowners insurance companies, the ones that you see the commercials from, they can give liability insurance in addition to your rental insurance. And DC wants their clean hands certificate, which basically says you don't owe them any money over the past 30 days. And if your property's in the HOA or condo, they need approval by them. I think DC just requires an attestation letter, which basically means I promise that they said it's okay. But I know Maryland specifically requires a letter directly from the HOA on HOA letterhead to say that it's okay. They require that for long-term and short-term rentals. So for Maryland, short-term rentals vary by county. So DC is super easy because it's basically one district, but Maryland has so many different counties, so it can vary. But overall, the general consensus is that you still need a license to have a short-term rental in Maryland. Maryland actually wants you to have $1 million in commercial liability insurance. So DC only requires 250,000. Maryland requires $1 million. I get $1 million on all my properties. Like long term, short term, it doesn't matter, because that's one additional step. Especially if you don't own a property in LLC, you need to pay the extra. I think I pay an extra like $50 or something a year for my $1 million liability insurance policy. That means if something happens at that property and the person tries to sue you, guess what? They have to go through that liability insurance first. So that means they have to talk to my insurance company. You know, my insurance company gonna fight tooth and nail to keep their $1 million. And if anything up to that $1 million is going to be covered by my insurance company, right? Anything over that, well, not anything, because y'all know how insurance companies are, but within reason. Anything over that, that's when it might start to hit me personally. So if you do not have your property in LLC, I would say you 100% should put your property, have liability insurance on there. I say you should have at least $1 million. But even if you have your property LLCs or don't, or whatever, you still need $1 million in commercial liability insurance for short-term rentals in Maryland. You have to collect your taxes. That's everywhere. Collect taxes because you're going to have to pay taxes on your rentals. And then, of course, you have to be licensed. So same thing, it has to be your primary residence. So this has to be the primary residence of the host. Okay. So we went through some of the ways that I've made money in real estate, from short-term rentals. I've done long-term rentals. When I did short-term rentals, I still did room rentals or like basement rentals. It was just a shorter term. So I was looking for long-term rentals, but in the process, I would rent out a room for a week or a weekend because I was close to a public transit. So people could easily get down to the monuments. So that was really successful in the summertime in DC. And then I'm also a realtor, so I can help other people, create plans for themselves for what they want to do as well. All right, so we've already went through how do you turn a property into a rental property. We can cover ways to increase the value of a home. It's really simple. You basically have to research what are some of the things that make a home worth more. So whether it's adding a bedroom, finishing any space, a basement, adding a bathroom. Every single time you add something major or like renovate something major, it adds value to your home. All right. So that's a great way. If you say like, hey, I don't even want to deal with the renters, but maybe I'll buy a house and I'll slowly fix it up throughout the year. And then maybe because now I did the kitchen, I did the bathrooms, and I finished the basement, it's going to be worth more and I can sell it and then buy another one. Because I really want this dream house, but I can start here and then work my way up. So there's different ways for you to leverage real estate in order to get to your goals. That's actually one of the things I'm doing now. I bought a house a while ago. I've slowly fixed it up. I rented it out. I moved back in, fixed it up some more, and now I'm going to sell it so I can buy my dream house, or a version of my dream house. My dream house is like $30 million, but within reason what I can afford now. All right. So let's go ahead and get to goal setting and what you actually want to do with your real estate investing journey. So I have a couple of downloads. If you are the type of person to write it down, you can actually go and get this template from my website, legacyqueen.gumroad.com, and you can print this out for yourself. Or some people like to do it in their phone. I like to take phone notes because my handwriting is horrible and I want to be able to understand it later. But I basically use these goals in order to determine what I'm going to do, right? So goals have to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. All right. So specific goals, I can't say like, oh, I want to become a real estate investor. No, that's not specific. What type of real estate investor do you want to be? Do you want to invest in, do you want to do rehab properties? Do you want to do rental properties? Do you want to do arbitrage? Do you want to do, like, be super specific on what type of investing you want to do. Yeah, house hacking, right? That's my favorite. That's what I'm about to do again. Like, be specific. I want to get into house hacking. Measurable. So how will you know that you've met this goal, right? So number one, I already have a house and I'm just going to rent out the rooms that I already have. Or I need to buy a house that has at least 3 bedrooms or at least 4 bedrooms because I'm still going to live in one. For me, I was like, I need to buy a house that has a basement, right? Because if push comes to shove, I can live in the basement and rent out the rooms upstairs. Achievable. Is it realistic? Like, what's your credit score right now? How much money do you have in the bank? Is this realistic for what you want to do, right? Like, oh, I want to do a syndication. Okay, are you a millionaire and do you have at least $100,000 of cash to invest? Is that achievable? And if it's not, like, just create your steps to become your new goal becomes, I want to become a millionaire and have $100,000, because now you have to pick that goal that's achievable. So what are your next steps to doing that? All right. Relevant. So some people say, like, oh, I think I want to do this. I think I want to do that. Like, you're doing too many things. Let's focus down on what you actually want to do. And then time bound. What is your time bound? What's your timeline? You know, because some of y'all will be like, oh yeah, I want to get into real estate investing. When? This year? This month? In 10 years? When? What's your goal? What is your timeline? And be specific. I want to own 5 properties in 5 years. I want to own 5 properties by the time that I'm 54, right? I want to, like, be very specific. In order to do that, I need to buy 1 property every 2 years, right? Break it down even more. In order to do that, I need to make sure that I buy properties in this area because those properties are going to appreciate and I'll be able to refinance it. So go ahead and figure out what exactly you want your goal to be and then write it down, right? If you don't write your goal down, I say it doesn't count. I think there's, like, so many things behind it. Even in the Bible, it says, like, write your goals down. You want it to count. You want it to be concrete. You want something to be able to look back at. So here's some different goals that people have had in the past. As a real estate agent, I want to sell X houses. I want to sell 1 house a month. I want to sell 5 houses this year. I want to sell 40 houses this year. Or you can have a numerical goal. I want to make $200,000 a year in real estate, right? That can be through selling houses. That can be through flipping houses. Realistically, that's not going to be through cash flow unless you have enough money and or connection to a syndication where they're going to be buying hundreds and hundreds of units of apartment units to be able to make that work. Or it can be simple. I want to buy 1 rental property this year. That's simple enough. Or I want to own X amount of properties or X amount of units, right? So I talked about this goal earlier. Say you're making, perfect. So a property, you want each property to make at least $300,000, right? So you'll do your math to figure out which properties are making $300 a month, pure cash flow. Say you make $5,000 a month. $5,000 a month is what, $60,000 a year? All right, $5,000 a month divided by $300 of pure cash flow means that I have to own about 17 properties before I can replace my income. So I know that my retirement goal is going to be to own 17 cash flowing rental properties, right? Because I want to be able to replace my income. All right. I want to own $2 million in rental properties, right? So $2 million in rental property means you can buy 4 properties that are each worth $500,000, or you can buy 10 properties, each worth $200,000. Is that math right? Yeah. So how are you going to get to your $2 million in rental properties? I want to increase my cash flow from $300 a month to $1,500 a month. So maybe you own 1 property now, you're making $300. Do you want to pay down your mortgage so that you're making more per month off the property? Or do you want to acquire 5 new properties, each making 500, or acquire 4 new properties so that they're each making $300 a month? How are you going to get there? One of my first goals was the house hack in order to get money to travel. I was like, all right, I have a job, but I have this house. I know I want to rent out rooms. I was like, at the time, I think I can rent out rooms for $700-800, now more, but $700-800. Ooh, if I can get an extra $700 a month, I can travel to Europe. If I can rent out my house just for the summertime, because it's all these summer interns coming to DC, that's $2,400. I can travel here. I literally wanted a house hack just to get money to travel, to be able to do my own thing. I wasn't even thinking of like return on investment. I was like, I just need extra money and I need the opportunity to cover my bills should anything happen, like with my job, anything like that. We already talked about replacing your 9-to-5 income with real estate income. Do you want to just do a more realistic, like more like structural goal? Like it's not about necessarily making money, but I'm going to flip three houses this year, right? Ideally, you make money, but instead of saying I'm going to make $50,000 from each property, maybe you want to just learn the ins and out of flipping a house. So I'm going to flip 3 properties this year. That's my goal. Or you want to get your systems in place, right? And by flipping 3, you'll definitely have systems. You'll know contractors to use and or to not use. You'll definitely have your systems in place. And then maybe from flipping 3 houses this year, you'll go to flipping 5 houses next year. Or some people even 10x their goals and they go from 3 houses a year to three houses a month, just because they're able to create their systems and get really strong with that. Some people have goals like this. I want to have 1 property to cover each liability. So 1 property is going to pay my car note. The next property is going to fund my travel. The next property is for other entertainment or for retirement. So you can do it like that. And then these examples are financial goals, but overall, it's really about how you want to build wealth through real estate. Like your goals can be like, oh, I want to read 3 real estate books this year. I want to read Real Estate for Dummies. I want to analyze 1 property a day for 6 months so I can learn the real estate market. Like there can be goals like that. They don't have to be financial goals. These goals will help you build wealth, but they'll just help you build wealth in the future. All right. So keep that in mind, but definitely write them down. So go figure out what pathways for you. Once you have your goal, figure out what your strategy is going to be. So if one of your goals is to own rental properties, figure out, or to have a rental property, like to be a landlord, you have to figure out, okay, well, are you going to do that through arbitrage? Are you going to do that by buying a turnkey property? Are you going to do that by buying a property that needs some work and that you have to rehab? Like, how are you going to do that? Right. And then I would say start with the end in mind, figure out what your end goal is, and then backwards plan. In order to do that, you kind of have to know what your risk tolerance is, right? If you have high risk, you're okay with flipping, right? Like up until as of right now, because my flip property has not sold yet, I have lost a lot of money flipping that property. And if that property never sells, I lost a lot of money. Now, starting at the end of the month, when that property closes, I made my money back, plus some, right? But as of right now, say nothing else goes right or they pull out, I've lost a lot of money. And that's higher risk, right? I was still able to sustain because I have all these other rental properties and I have my real estate business and I'm making money from other streams, other sources of income. Developing land, same thing as flipping, just gutting properties and basically developing land, rebuilding new builds, or even taking current properties and fully gutting them. Sometimes flipping can be as simple as, oh, this house, it looks decent, but it needs new floors, new paint, and maybe new toilets. Like I'll just add, that could be flipping. But developing is like, no, I'm going to gut this. I'm going to get new electric, new HVAC, new plumbing, new everything. Vacation rentals can be risky. Depends on what market you're in. DC is pretty stable because you have all the monuments and lots of tourist attractions. But if you have a vacation rental in a place that's like just the summertime, like beach property, all right. So how are you making money during the off season? That's what you have to ask yourself. Medium risk is midterm rentals and room rentals. I actually think room rentals is even lower risk than that. But I say medium risk just because you still have to manage the renter, and a lot of the times you're not there to do that. Lower risk is house hacking and long-term residential rentals, right? So this is what most people do. They rent a property for a year. And I would even add some like government subsidized housing, because if the government is continuing to pay you a portion of the rent, that is much lower risk than you renting out to a person who does not have any subsidy, because if they stop paying, they just stop paying. You have to do the eviction. Okay. So high risk is typically done for cash. So I'm flipping a property because I want that cash now. I want to make $20,000. I want to make $50,000. Where does arbitrage stand on risk level? That's arbitrage is low risk, because really you're only responsible for rent for that for that property for the time period of your lease, right? If you own a property, you have a 15 to 30-year mortgage, unless you own the property outright. Arbitrage, you may have a 6-month lease, a 1-year lease. You're basically renting the property out. Now, you have to make sure you're in the right area, because you could rent the property out and at the end of the day, it be in a bad area and you get you don't make money off the property. But if you don't do that, you can do like what other renters do. You just stop paying your rent. You can't stop paying your mortgage, right? You can get foreclosed on, but people can stop paying the rent all the time. I don't recommend it because I'm a landlord, but yeah. So high risk is done for cash. Low risk is done for wealth building, right? So these long-term residential properties, I want my tenants in there for long term, or I just want to keep it for as long as possible. And then that way I build wealth over time. I cannot build wealth by going to flip a property. No, because I'm getting that cash immediately and I'm getting taxed on that cash immediately. I can only build wealth over time. All right, because I'm getting the equity in that property. Let me see what that question was. What is the program that sells the contract? So that's called wholesaling. Wholesaling is more of a marketing strategy where you get people to to agree to sell their property for lower, and you get a contract, and then you sell that contract to someone else. It is regulated now. Before anyone could do it, now certain counties or districts or whatever are saying like, okay, in order for you to do wholesaling, you have to be a realtor, right? Or some places say like, in order for you to wholesale a contract, you have to have enough money to close on that contract if you're not able to sell the contract to someone else. So if you got this property for under contract for under $250,000, you have to have enough money to be able to buy that property, either whether it's through a loan or not. Wholesaling is super low risk, because basically you're getting the property under contract, and if the contract doesn't perform, you just lose the contract. But if you're not able to sell it, it doesn't matter. Really, the owner is the one that's taking the most of the risk. The seller's taking most of the risk. So wholesaling is, I'll put that under low risk as well. Definitely need skill to do it, but definitely low risk. All right, so just figure out exactly what you guys want. When you figure out your why, it helps you figure out your strategy. So do you want stabilization? Do you want to grow your portfolio and like buy as many properties as possible? Do you want to cash flow more? Like cash flow is like a Baltimore market, or do you want to appreciate more? Appreciation is more a DC market. And then figure out your why. Your why you're going to do it. Is it to get income for retirement? Is it to build a legacy for your family? Like, I want to buy a house for each of my kids so that I can give them each a house upon graduation from high school. That's 18 years. They'll own a house. I put it on a 15-year mortgage. They'll each have a house owned free and clear. On the 18th birthday, they can either sell that house, use the money, they can sell the house and use it for college or the career choice, or they can live in the house. They can turn the house into a rental property, and now they have their first investment property. So many things you can do. And then figure out what your motivation is, because if you're not motivated to do it, believe me, real estate sounds great, but I'm a nerd about real estate and money and analyzing properties. If you don't enjoy it, it's going to be stressful, right? For me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to research the ways to save money in real estate through taxes. I'm going to read through all these tax policies and these tax articles in order to find it out. And I can do that for hours on some days. Other days, I'm like, I don't even want to think about it. So if you can't do it any day, then maybe that's not your ministry. Well, that's about taxes, but that's not your ministry. So figure out what your motivation is and why real estate will be the way to fulfill that motivation. Have your start date, make sure you have your benchmarks, have your timeline, what's your deadline, what's your reward from it? Like, Okay, if I go and get this property, oh, my reward was Chick-fil-A. Whenever I have to go drive to Baltimore to do work on a property, I would like, because I was doing a lot of work myself before I hired contractors, I was painting myself. I would reward myself by getting Chick-fil-A on the way home. Right. So I now made that contingent, Chick-fil-A contingent on me doing this work. Or like, okay, I'll get this property, and then with the income from this property, I'll do a spa day. I'll do this. So you can figure out what your reward system is going to be. And that really just, or you could just say, like, I just want to tell people that I own 10 properties. That's personal satisfaction. So I would say figure out what your reward system is going to be, because if not, it's going to be really stressful. There are going to be obstacles, and basically you really just have to figure out a way to predict what those obstacles are going to be. It's not really predicting, because other investors have already dealt with it. So speak with the mentor or speak with someone who's been doing it. So predict what the obstacles is going to be and figure out what your strategy is for meeting those obstacles. Because that first year of investing in real estate, maybe the first 2 years, that's when all your problems are going to happen. And it's not because it's all your problems, but those are problems that are new to you. I'm probably still having the same problems. I just don't think twice about it because it's happened so many times. I already have a system in place, and now it's just a part of doing business. Right? Tenant calls, says the toilet's not working. Okay, can you put in the maintenance through class ticket? Okay, I'm going to call my home warranty, call the manager. They're going to do that. They're going to take care of it. Blah blah blah. They will see payment done. Right? Versus like the tenant called and said the toilet's not working, and it's 10 o'clock at night. What am I going to do? That's what you do your first year. After that, you have your systems in place, so and everything's fine. All right. So, okay. I would say from here on out, once you have your goal in mind, you have what strategy you're going to use, create a list of the tasks that are needed for you to get to to get to that goal, and then focus on the ones that are going to make the most money, right? So create a list of all of the tasks that you need to do. If you want to buy a property, your most simple tasks it's so simple, right? You do need to know your credit score, but you actually don't have to. Get in contact with the realtor, get in contact with the lender, and send them your documents. Those are the most simple next step tasks, right? They're going to ask for your last 60 days of pay stubs, last 60 days of bank statements. Your lender is going to help you determine how much property you can actually afford. Those are your next steps. Just write it down, like, okay, I'm going to need my last 2 years of tax returns. Let me go ahead and download that to my computer. I'm going to need my last 60 days of bank statements. Let me get all of them, and I'm gonna show them my retirement fund money so they can qualify me for more. So just write down all your tasks and focus on the ones that make the most money, right? Don't be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I need to pick out paint colors for this property that I don't own. No, that's really, really fun to do. Like going on Zillow and just looking at houses, dream house. That's really fun to do, but that doesn't make you any money in the long run. So figure out the tasks that are income producing in the future and focus on those. All right. So if you guys want, you can always set up a coaching call with me. I think for your very first coaching call is free. After that, it does cost money. Why? Because time is money. And also if not, I have tons of free resources available on this legacyqueen.gumroad. I have the QR code here. But I have guides, books, webinar playbacks, workshop templates, just a ton of free resources. And I continue to update it. So if it's a good workshop, if it's a good webinar, I'm going to continue to update it so that more people will have access to these. So some of the resources are free, some of them are like $2, some are like $5, some of them 40. Like it goes up in price, but there's a lot of free resources there as well for people who just want to learn a little bit more. We'll be having monthly workshops. I think this year we're doing workshops on the second Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're just going to go through the different topics. So whether that be finding some off-market leads, growing your real estate team, estimating rehab costs, how do you buy your first property, how you buy your first 5 properties. So we're going to be going through all of those different options so that people can kind of get a better understanding of what is it that they need in order to grow their real estate business. All right. I'm always open to suggestions for workshop ideas. I love hearing people's suggestions because I want to know what you guys want to know. I'm also open to other types of work sessions. In the past, we've done some in-person meetups as well. So that's an option as well for people who want to do the in-person option. We can totally have some in-person meetups, but my main thing is making sure that you guys get the information that you need so that you can get started in being in real estate. And I think I want to do some more of the workshops for actual landlords, because what I find happens is that once people actually buy their properties, they kind of stuck, right? They don't have a community of other people who are currently investors. So having a property is great, but I also want you all to be able to, like, basically be able to meet with each other and say, like, okay, well, this is what I do as a landlord. This is one of the tools that I use as a landlord. This is one of the resources that I use as a landlord. All right. Let me see. I went through all my freebies and stuff. Okay. All right. So now hold on one second, because I'm going to open this up to questions, but I do want to stop the recording in case people had specific things that they didn't want me to, like, share with other people. So just hold on one second while I stop the recording.